Well, hello, and welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast. Join me, Sam Harris, on my journey of curiosity and growth. I have conversations with some of the world's most fascinating humans, from billionaires to Olympians, and most everyone in between, such as suspiciously happy people and even a hitman. Success isn't just for successful people, it is earned, and you can earn it too. I find out how ordinary people become extraordinary to fuel your own growth mindset. On the podcast today, we have Kathleen Black, a highly successful real estate investor and coach who has helped her clients 20x their businesses. She's written a book called The Top 1% Life, the real estate agent's guide to free up your time, build your business with confidence, and finally have a life outside. Now, obviously, as I am British, I was a little bit cynical to any book with a title claim like that. But actually, it's quite worth reading and it's available free on her website, and she speaks a lot of sense, and I'm sure you'll really enjoy my conversation with her today. In the interview, we cover what it's like being a successful woman in a male-centered environment, such as real estate. We talk about the future of real estate market and the impact of COVID-19, and also investing in general. Talk about how to change your mindsets and the mindsets of others, and of course, writing a book. And I really hope you enjoy the conversation. And without further ado, Kathleen Black. Okay, so welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast. Before I mess up her introduction, I'm going to throw the mic over to her and let her give us a summary of her life.
Oh my goodness. I think I'm like a cat. I have 9 lives. First of all, thank you for having me on. And I love the name, like growth mindset, so important, right? So I'm happy to be here and connect with all of you. And I think like anybody who's built a business or went through any transformations in their life, I really do feel like I've had 9 lives. So, like a lot of people, I left home young and kind of, worked hard to get into university for journalism, got there and didn't love it, and essentially decided to have a baby in university. That was fun, but that actually was what got me into starting to bring in like students. So I had exchange students that would come in that helped me kind of, live and support my livelihood. And I worked on the side. Coming out of university, I ended up to get involved in investment properties. And that's what actually led me into real estate. So I ended up with a degree in psychology and women's studies. And some people say, what did you do with women's studies? But ironically, I've done a lot with it. I think our coaching platform is much better because we understand like energy and voice and how to empower people around us. And a lot of that came from women's studies. It's just an interesting way to think and learn. So I came out of that and got into investment properties. And that was a whole nother, metamorphosis of how do you purchase investment properties and renovate them with basically no money and build up an investment portfolio to the point where they started to call my husband and I the no money miracle, which is after a furniture store that I don't even know. So there was that, which led me to get my real estate license, which I really didn't want to do. And then I ended up to get into coaching because I went through a super messy separation, basically, lost almost everything, had a huge legal bill, and ended up to get really good at real estate really fast because I had 2 little kids to support. And that pressure to get really good with limited time at what I was doing actually led to a lot of the content and a lot of the mindset that we use now for coaching. So I got involved in a coaching company. Basically, 2 owners walked in other directions and I got a fire sale and I jumped all over it. It was a company in a ton of debt just before I took on 50% of the ownership of my prior coaching company. I found out it was about $190,000 Canadian, so it's a bit different in debt, but it still was a lot for a company that was only a couple of years old. And I'm so thankful because, it's like, oh my gosh, Steve Jobs said, right? It always makes sense in retrospect. Like going forward, it doesn't always make sense, but in retrospect, it almost seems like this perfect path that led me to exactly what I'm doing now. And I always say it was a chain of potentially unfortunate events for others, but I know that's probably not true. It was just part of their path where things didn't work out. And I happened to be there and I just took a chance and said, hey, I'm going to try to pick this up. And so it's been 4.5 years now since I sold my shares in the prior company. And I did turn it around. I did turn around the debt and recreate all of our content. And it's still the basis of the company that we have now. But I've got to tell you, building a company and helping helping people build up what they want in business without the weight of debt or, business partners who don't play nice. It just feels so much easier. It's like flying, right? So I help people expand and scale and build from where they are, which is what I've kind of done my whole life. So it seems like a perfect fit for me.
Quite a few things.
That's what I said, 9 lives.
I think a lot to be done from like women's studies, because they are like 50% of the world, and they have, generally speaking, more skills than men, it appears. So yeah,
different skills.
But as in, it's actually sort of been shown that on average girls are better at maths in school when they're young, but then they just happen to get better at like lots of other things as well, like social and talking and stuff, and they go into other jobs besides sort of coding and maths, even though technically speaking they probably would be better. And you're like, oh great. So how did women's studies help you like get the best out of the people you work with, or do you teach them to take on properties of women or how to work with women? I don't quite understand.
Women's studies is a multidisciplinary degree, right? So you end up taking courses in, history and religion and geography, and then you take courses right in women's studies as well. You might be in literature, you might take courses in gender studies. It's really multifaceted, which is great. So a lot of women's studies is looking at systems, really, like it's looking at, systemic discrimination, for example, right? So it's saying, hey, there's way more to things than what you see on the surface. It's looking at how power dynamics play out, how control plays out. It's looking at how we use speech to either empower people, make them feel comfortable and empower their voice and their confidence, or how we use it to dominate over their voice. And I feel this is integral. I'm in what is traditionally a sales industry. I don't run as a salesperson, I run as a consultant, but a lot of what my passion for consulting comes from studying speech dynamics and again, watching what happens, because I believe when we're in a true traditional sales mindset, we're really looking to have a dominant voice. Whereas an advocate or a consultant is looking to empower another person's voice and work with them. It's a very, very different dynamic. So women's studies allows you to see what are the patterns behind what's happening and how can you change them or make them better, at least just even be aware of them. Because some people are just taught, say this, do this, and they don't see what's behind it, right? They don't see that it's a set of beliefs that maybe they believe in, maybe they don't. They're not even seeing that part of it.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's just a great case of transferable skills. And I think if you have the mindset to be looking for them, as in some people kind of just study one thing and they just take it at surface value, it seems that you sort of found all like the underlying things behind it and how that went into like the rest of your life and transferred it. So nice one. I feel like I've missed out by not doing women's studies now, but I guess I have looked into a lot of those things in different ways and certainly learned a lot. So interesting. I'd love to see it from that angle. Okay, and then you got into investment properties. So how did you just first get into that? I'm a bit confused by how you just sort of jumped into it. You got a job?
No, I left university and I went to university in Ottawa in Canada, which is our nation's capital. And then I moved back to Toronto, which is our province's capital, which is still the biggest city in Canada. So I moved back there and I got married. So my husband and he was a firefighter and he was already, purchasing properties. And then so we'd purchase it, we'd gut it completely and then make them into multi-units. So multiple apartments, right? In one house. So that's how we initially got into that, which is why I became a realtor, because it's hard to find real estate agents who understood how to assess properties and how to assess rents and make sure that we were getting a sound investment. So I ended up doing a lot of that anyway. And my husband kept saying, why don't you just get your real estate license? I was like, I have 2 little kids that I'm already dragging around. I'm painting houses and sanding drywall. I'm busy enough. There was a lot of sweat equity. I said, I don't think I need another job right now. But looking back, thank goodness I did do that. But yeah, real estate's a busy career, right? Like that's why I help people have a life, because a lot of people in real estate are really successful. Their life is real estate. That's it. It takes over.
What do you learn getting a real estate license, or what does it give you?
Well, that's a good question. So getting a real estate license teaches you a lot about the laws. It doesn't teach you a lot about communication or success in the actual industry. They teach you a lot about clauses and offers and the legalities of it, things like that. So it gets you the right to help people buy or sell houses legally, which most countries have organized real estate that require that. From what I understand of, United Kingdom, England, US, Canada, we all have boards. So we have organized real estate, which means that you have to have your license to trade and help people buy or sell, or even in some areas to rent.
What do you think about like the future of sort of legal tech and coming in and making all things like this much easier, so you don't need a human that can like know all the laws, because if your software just does it all for you and you can just buy and sell things really quickly? Going to make things like real estate licenses redundant?
I think the people who are already leveraging technology and they see that we have shifted from a place of being product salespeople to being professionals who are consulting on a process, I think those people will do very well. They'll be more efficient and they'll probably sell more business than ever because they already have been for the last 5 to 10 years. They've already done the shift. The traditional agent who thinks their job is to sell somebody on a specific house that they happen to call about, I think they're going to be heavily impacted by technology. Most people are connecting, with houses they're interested in online. And the reality is it's less than 1% of people who buy the house they see online when they contact an agent. It's very rare that they're going to buy that specific house. So, we're in a crisis situation. Like as we're taping this, COVID-19 is happening. And if we didn't know before how important, human will, human confidence, our ability to take a confident strategic direction and influence others and how valuable that is, I think now we should see that because we have leaders who are standing up in a crisis and we have leaders who are hiding in a crisis. And leadership is extremely valuable. I think the problem is most agents don't understand the value in the market and they don't understand their value in a changing market. So it's scary for them to think if this technology comes in, is it going to replace me? Like there's human sentience and then there's human sapience, right? One is IQ, one is knowledge, and AI, artificial intelligence technology can replicate that, but it can't replicate the human experience of I know what it's like to put an offer on a house when 20 other people are bidding on it and how it's going to play out, or guiding you to keep going until you reach your outcome, which might be buying a house, might be creating a real estate team, might be, having a higher level of energy. It's all the same. Like we have more life coaching, more consulting now than we've ever had as a world, right? People want guidance. The problem is real estate agents haven't seen themselves as guides for the majority of them, for what I've seen yet. I think that's the more challenging aspect.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how do you think you're going to overcome that challenge, and do you want to kind of own the market, like trying to go into online, or is that more of a side thing to the sort of stuff that you do?
The network we work with are really strong with online lead generation. Like that's one of their top strengths. So we've been doing that for a long, long time. When it comes to like the online, I don't know if you mean like buying online or the virtual offers, the iBuyer, all of that, end of the day, a good marketing plan is always going to listen to the market and their people, right? The clients, what they want. And end of the day, people want convenience, right? So there's some people who would rather sell their house with an offer now and not have people through their home and have it done in a couple of days. But again, COVID is kind of showing that some of these big players that are coming into the real estate industry prepped for multiple markets and some did not. Like if we're in a really aggressive buyer's market, that house prices are depleting per day and you're giving somebody an offer today and your margins are safe, but the market's depleting faster than your projections, are you set up for that? And what we're seeing, like there's major layoffs, like multiple players have stopped offering their online offers or they've reneged on them with what's going on with COVID. And that tells me that, hey, in an extended buyer's market, that platform might not be as strong as what they're projecting. So, it's like a guaranteed home sale. Hey, we'll sell your home in 18 days or we'll buy it. End of the day, the market wants those options. Does it mean they're necessarily going to pick them in the end? The majority, what we're seeing are not, right? They're getting the offer online and then they're having the option to work with a real estate agent, at least the majority across North America. And 95% or more are still choosing to work with the agent.
Interesting. So that human connection. So in terms of the COVID-19 situation, as an industry, what have been the biggest changes and what do you think is going to be the impact over the next 2 years?
The biggest changes is remote, right? So we work with people who have actual sales processes, like they have a business foundation, which this is important. So again, if I see myself as, hey, somebody calls about a house, I don't even have it listed. The only way I make money is selling the person on that house. So I'm selling a product. I'm transactional. It's not about the relationship or the process. I work with them to get them confident and educated and strong. It's not about that. It's about buy this house, I get paid. Those people are suffering right now with these changes, but anybody who already had a process, they're just adjusting it online. So for example, I'm never going to recommend a buyer purchase a house unless they know how I represent them. They know the process we're going to go through. We've done certain steps to educate them to ensure that they are making a choice that they're comfortable with for themselves and if they have a family or as an investor. So at this point, when I put things remote, I'm not going to say yes or no, you should buy a house, you shouldn't buy a house right now. I'm going to say, okay, here's what I can do to help you with step one. Once we're at step one, here's what I can do to help you with step two. We can do a majority of those steps online, and then some people will go on hold until the markets open up, depending on what area you are listening to this. And some people are buying sight unseen. They're buying with conditions to see the house after they've come to an agreement with the seller. So really, it's showing who has a comprehensive plan because they're basically adapting much quicker is the easiest way to say it.
Interesting. And so in terms of people buying, there's been like a big reduction in, right?
Yes.
As far as I'm aware. And did you operate in rental market as well, or is it just buying?
No, some of the teams do both, right? So they'll do leases and they do helping people buy and sell. Some don't. It just depends.
Okay, cool. So it might sound a bit stupid, seems obvious, but like, what is the main reason behind people slowing down in buying?
Well, there's physical restrictions, there's fear, right? I think fear is the main reason. I mean, people are scared, right? Real estate agents are scared. Business owners are scared. People are closing their door. I think they're scared of the perceived risk of getting sick, for one, right? They're scared of human contact and maybe getting sick with people outside of their immediate family they're staying with. Like all countries have had different mandates. Here in Ontario, we're under state of emergency. So real estate agents are considered essential services, but only for people who have an immediate need. So I think, across North America, for sure, there's a lot of fear of what's going to happen, right? When we have more people in the US on unemployment than we even had during the Great Recession, I mean, people are scared for sure. They don't know what's going to happen. And I think they're scared of the unknown. So some people are focused on what they can do in this situation, which is empowering them. And some people are focused on what they can't do, which is completely overwhelming them, right? And there's uncertainty in the market, right? Like whenever certainty and like whenever comfort and security go down, opportunities are more plentiful and they're more affordable. But the majority of the market doesn't want to buy when the prices are down because they want security and they want comfort and they'll pay more to have it. So right now, that's impacting us for sure.
If you had £10 million to invest right now, would you put it into property or the stock market or oil, or what would you do?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, with oil a couple of days ago, it might have been a good idea when they limited supply, right? But
they're still reducing it by 10%, and yet it's had 30% less demand. So
yeah,
it has gone up a lot.
That's what I mean. Like if I had like known before. But me personally, like in real estate, we've seen a reduction in demand, but we haven't seen a big adjustment in cost yet. Like we're on a really strong seller's market where I am here. So afterwards, we'll see what happens because it was a really, really strong market. Like properties having, 30, 40 offers on them, 10 offers, like that's very common. So there's a lot of competition. So if the prices were to level out or go down a little bit coming out of this, I'd definitely invest in real estate. I'm a long-term holder. I'm very comfortable with that. So I would do that. Stock market, maybe it's not my area of mastery. And I like to stay in an area of mastery, but I do invest, but more so with advisors. Like they're going to advise me where to go. So to be honest, probably a little bit with the stock market and a lot in real estate.
You don't be worried that you'd be overexposed in one area?
In North America, real estate has been the most consistent, strong investment. It's had the best payoffs over time, like for an average investor. Like I'm not talking about somebody who's really savvy with a certain stock and is having a massive return, but over time, I mean, the reality is if I hold a property, 25 years, even if the property stays as is, I'm going to be mortgage free in 25 years and then still have the income from that renter. But the reality is that we've never seen a market where that's happened. I'm probably looking at least doubling what the house is worth in that amount of time. So it's a very safe and predictable investment for those who understand it. So no, I don't think I'd be overexposed, but also I make sure I have enough equity in the houses to withstand any certain fluctuations, because that's how people in the 80s and a lot of people lost all their properties because everything was in real estate, but they were just super leveraged and exposed too much to sustain a buyer's market, right?
Cool. So when do you expect the market will pick up and what needs to happen to make that?
I don't have any expectations on when the market is going to pick up because I think it's not in anything to do with hands that I have any say over. I'm not a market maker. I'm a market facilitator. And until the government, the politicians decide when they're going to open things up and let people be back out in waves, which I'm sure will be very regulated and restrained in certain areas, until they decide to do that. Right now, I mean, people are still selling houses. We have houses that have been sold totally remote. We're going to continue to plant seeds. And when the sunshine comes out and confidence comes up and security comes up, we're going to work with those seeds then. That's all we can do. So I have no idea. I mean, Trump wants to take things off as soon as possible, but who knows, right?
Okay, back to your messy divorce. So you said this was the point that actually kind of made you in some ways, like having the pressure just forced you to really kind of dig deep and really kind of learn the skills you needed. So do you think there could have been a way that you did the same actions to become the same person, but without having the divorce or need? As if I sort of been like, right, you've got 1 year to become really successful, how would you have done that?
Okay, I'm going to answer it, but I'm also going to say something that I've been saying for the past 3.5 weeks now. If you could take the urgency that what's happening in the world right now, like the pandemic is creating in some people, and you could bottle it and you could sell it on a sunny day when security is high and confidence is high, you would be a billionaire, because that is what creates change. But the reality is that in a storm like this, or my divorce, or when I left home young, or when I wasn't seeing eye to eye with my past business partner, all of those things created tension. And that tension, you have to make a choice. You're either going to say, I'm not going to let this push me down, and I'm going to use that urgency to push through some really hard times and come out ahead, or you're going to let it overwhelm you and become the cliche, right? Like bitter and physically alive, but not really mentally, spiritually alive. And that tension, that urgency is priceless. It's painful, but it's priceless. So would I have ever achieved being where I am now without going through all those things? No. And I think now when I go through difficult things, I don't see them as big of a deal, because I'm like, yeah. Like, we've been through stuff. Like, it's all going to be fine. My friends are like, how are you so calm? Like, once you lose everything, you realize that the world just responds to you. You just rebuild it. It's like an inner world, right? It might take some time.
Yeah, I sort of get like almost excited when everything's going wrong and I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm like, ooh, I don't know the end of the story, but it's going to be fine. And so you just kind of like almost force yourself to do stupid things, which hasn't always gone brilliantly, but like, it's always worked out ultimately. It's kind of fascinating. Have you heard of the concept of anti-fragile?
No, I can think of some other names that I think would be similar, but I'll let you explain.
Fragile is something that kind of weakens under stress and pain. And then like resilient, is like it deals with it. Anti-fragile like gets stronger. So as in Greek mythology or something, like the Hydra where you cut off its head and then it grows two, that's anti-fragile. So it's kind of almost like humans that can respond to change, like bad things actually get stronger. So you sort of had like almost an anti-fragile reaction to what happened, because of if it hadn't have happened, the bad thing, actually you wouldn't have got as strong as you did. Whereas some people can just be fragile and they kind of just break and fall apart and maybe eventually get themselves back together, but still sort of.
Well, yeah, the alchemy of it, right? Like you take coal or you take lead and you turn it into gold. And I think we're told so often that things are holding us back or that it is hard. It's all through social media. You're not okay. You're home with kids and you're trying to work and you're doing all this stuff. I'm like, wait, let's put this into proximity. Like you're in a warm house, you have food, you can deliver groceries, like you have your family around you, you're not alone. Like what part isn't okay? But that's the way I'm wired, right? And not everybody's wired that way. So if I was wired to think that I'm fragile or that I'm easily going to break, then when I get into those situations, I'd probably crumble. And I think, we have those messages so much. Maybe that's why I love coaching, because I love showing people like, no, you're immensely capable, like immensely. And they're shocked that I see that so instant, but it's like, you're human. Like, it's innate in you, right?
Yeah, just wondering if there are ways to kind of put yourself through adversity. Because I started a thing called Thrill Seekers Adventure Club during this sort of pandemic for if you can't go outside, you need to kind of go inside, like into your brain, into your body and sort of still have adventure, but just in different ways. So like learning to do a Rubik's Cube or sort of just fasting for as long as you possibly can, or just doing stupid press-up challenges. So have you heard of like the Sally Up, Sally Down challenge? It's a Moby song where he just sings bring Sally up, bring Sally down endlessly. That's all the words. And every time he says up, you just go up, and then down, you go down. And like, it just doesn't stop. It's really hard. But I'm just doing that challenge on the hour, every hour for a whole week. And it's just really stupid. And it's horrible. But like people climb mountains, which is just like putting one leg in front of the other endlessly just to get, it's like, it's kind of the same thing, but in your house. And it's something like, it's just sort of a way to be stupid, but to put yourself through adversity and kind of learn from yourself and kind of grow in ways while stuck indoors.
I think they've played that song during yoga for sit-ups, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you can do it like sit-ups, squats, anything really. It's good.
It's like the David Goggins. I know somebody else who did the same thing after reading Can't Hurt Me, that David Goggins, I think I'm saying it wrong, but yeah, on the hour, they did like certain number of push-ups coming out of that. So like, I'm trying to build my mental toughness.
Yeah, it definitely helps. But it makes you aware how much time there is in the day. Like there's so many hours in the day when you suddenly have like this painful thing each hour to do. Like crap, they come fast. But it makes you quite deliberate about how you use your hour, because you're kind of aware that it's sort of going to go quite quickly before the next one starts. And you're also kind of aware that if you're doing something difficult, an hour won't last very long, and you can kind of get the difficult thing done in the hour. And then the super horrible, painful thing that lasts 4 minutes, like you do that, but it ends pretty quickly as well. It's only 4 minutes and you can kind of just take on horrible things quite easily. It's really useful. So yeah, that's been helping, even though when I first started it just had like a really stupid idea. But actually, now that I'm doing it, I'm like, yeah, there was some wisdom in the stupid idea. The show today is brought to you by Praxis, a legitimate alternative to a college degree. They'll get you a great job without the cost, basically. Praxis is a 6-month course in skills that you need to land a job in marketing, sales, or operations. And graduates from Praxis get a starting salary of roughly 50k after graduation normally. And you pay no fees until you're hired. So I just think it's a really good way to get an education without all the costs. And I really believe that education is hugely overpriced, and like a college degree doesn't even teach you all the relevant skills that you need anyway. And it's much better to spend that time in the job earning money than it is being away from the things that you're going to be doing, and you're just kind of wasting your time at a college paying crazy fees to learn out-of-date style information that you don't really need. So I'm a huge believer in proving your skills by doing rather than saying. And a formal education means that you have a document that says you might be good at something, whereas Praxis gives you the time to actually do the things that show you are good by giving you experiences to learn from them. You can find out more on their homepage, discoverpraxis.com. You can also get a free ebook about Praxis to find out if this is the kind of thing for you at discoverpraxis.com/show notes. So that was Praxis, a legitimate alternative to a college degree. Good. Anyway, complete tangent, but I mean, I guess it related. Yeah, just wondering, because I guess I've been doing that as a kind of like a principle for other things, as in putting myself through some pressure to grow. But is there a way that you could somehow force yourself on like a entrepreneurship boot camp style, sort of almost give everything away and force yourself to do something?
Well, I don't know that. I think you can put yourself in the petri dish, right? Where you put yourself out there, make commitments, where you have to kind of hustle and have urgency to get it done. It's like people who sign up for an Ironman, right? Like they could just go train on their own, but the Ironman gives them that environment where they have an outcome, they have urgency, they have pressure. And I think that tension is important. And I think some people are worried about stress, and I get that, but it's not my idea. There's eustress or there's distress, right? And distress comes from outside. But if you want something for yourself, go put yourself out there. What's the worst thing? That you fail and you pick up and you do it again? Like that's the entrepreneurial way. So I don't know. If I mentally trick myself with that a lot. Like even this year we had some projects and I called myself out and I said, like, wouldn't it be great to be at the beginning again and have nothing and be scared, because I was all in because I had nothing and I was scared. So I'll mentally say, if you were at the beginning and you were scared and you had to go all in, would you say yes to this project? Because I think our mind starts to say to us, okay, well, you don't want to rock the boat, or you don't want to risk it. Like now that you have this, you don't want to risk it. But yet when I had nothing, I risked it, which is why I have what I have now, right? So it's like you always want to have an educated risk, but I'll trick my brain and be like, you know what? If this was the beginning, if this was step one, how would you respond? And sometimes I say no, but most of the time I say yes.
Yeah, like the Amazon day one principle.
I like it.
Yeah. So if I was to give you a challenge for 1 week, what would you challenge yourself to do?
If I was
Like a self-selected.
Like this morning I did a video talking about, I have this run I do and I'm a fair weather runner, which is horrible. I would talk about that, but it's spring here. So I'm like, I'm back on track. So I do this, like, it's not long. It's just a little bit over 5K in the morning, but there's this hill at the end of it. And I've mentally, like 5 years ago, I committed to that I will always run up that hill. If I stop halfway, I have to walk all the way back to the bottom and I have to run up the whole thing. And I love that I did that, because it's like this set point of saying, in our industry or our world, usually you don't see any results for 60 to 90 days. So I can tell myself that I can stop halfway and I can walk up that hill and it's no big deal. But the reality is the likelihood that I'm going to stop and walk tomorrow is now 10 times higher. It's probably 100 times higher. And the next day and the next day and the next day. And I don't see the effects until 90 days later when I'm walking up the whole friggin' hill, even though my body is totally capable of it. So I have little things like that where only twice ever did I not run up the whole thing. And I made myself go to the bottom and run it up after. And it reminds me, it's like, it's a mental toughness thing of reminding me that what you do today has an impact later. And it does matter, even though you can't see it and you're capable. Your brain will play tricks on you saying you're less capable. The truth is you're more capable. So I just do little things like that that get me in a mental zone. So if I challenge myself to something for a week, it would be to run 5K in the morning and do power yoga every night. So I bookend it, because I find my energy is really good when I exercise twice, and everything works for me when my energy is good. It's all like from frequency, right?
Definitely kind of gives you a lot of momentum to other things. I used to work quite close to where I lived, but I lived like at the top of this really steep hill. And so I used to kind of cycle down it and up the other side to get to work, even though I didn't need to, the way around, just to kind of force myself to do these things. And that's kind of fun. Enjoyed it. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so how do you then go about, you said you sort of made the most of these unfortunate chain of events. Like, what did you actually do exactly to kind of get this property in the fire sale and actually then turn it around?
Oh, that was a business. So the first coaching company that I worked with, I became a coach, and then I became director of coaching, then director of operations. And I was listening to a ton of Think and Grow Rich in the morning, like the audio, because my kids, I was in the shower. So it was a time when I could focus, and I was listening to the chapters every morning, and something just kept coming over me and saying, like, you're running this company, you are this company, your heart's in it. Like, you need to be an owner, you need to walk. And finally I sat down. The owner wasn't really involved in running the business anyway, but I sat down with him and I said, listen, like, I need 50% of the company. I need 100% decision making, or I need to go and kind of do my own thing now. And it took 6 months of negotiations. Like, it wasn't that straightforward, but eventually he did give me that. And that's when they opened up the books. And I found out they were almost $190,000 in debt. And in Canada, even if you're incorporated or you're a business owner, there's certain types of debt that even if you go bankrupt, you still owe. Like, it stays with you as a person. And unfortunately, the majority of the debt was that. It was like employee arrears that you pay to the government, or taxes, things like that. Like, just silly stuff that you should never not pay. I don't know, whatever, but wasn't a time when I had influence over it. So we spent 18 months redoing all the content, which is a gamble as a company because we needed cash flow, right? Like, we needed security. And they had a setup at that time where everybody basically could sign up, and then 90 days in, if they weren't happy for absolutely any reason, they could not only cancel, but they could get all their money back. So like, we were paying our coaches for that. And it sounds like a good idea, but there were no terms like to make it work. So if they weren't doing what they needed to do and we were, they could like download all our content and basically kind of take off, which wasn't fantastic. So we changed our membership options, made it cheaper if people worked with us for longer, kept our loyal clients really happy because they got more perks, and basically had a more sustainable like cash flow base, which we needed. And then I spent 3.5 years running events that all had to be in the black. Like, they all had to cover and make a little bit of money. And I didn't have any money to reinvest in the company. It was all time and creativity because all the money went to pay off the debt. So when we paid off the debt and I was supposed to then get paid fairly for the role of running the company, the other business owner who was supposed to be silent all of a sudden wasn't that silent and just wanted to go in another direction. And eventually I came to the office, and even though the lease was in our name and I owned 50% of the company, he had changed the locks and like sent old agreements to the bank. It was really messy. So I had to get a lawyer and deal with that. But at the end of the day, I always believe intentions dictate your outcome, right? So if you have negative intentions, usually to me in my life, it's always come back to bite me or somebody else. And in the end, it was scary for a while, but that's where I ended up to have my half of the company bought out. Half the clients ended up to come with me, and I still owned all the content. So it was like unbelievable. It was like I was just meant to leave and start this company. It was as if there was like somebody setting it up perfectly for me to come out and do what I do now.
Interesting. So, and now what you're doing in terms of coaching real estate businesses, or just more like kind of small, what, because you say the top performers, like the top 1%, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so they're the top producers. So there's like brokerages who own, the brand or the brokerage, like they own the company. And there are producers that are within the brokerages, and some of them expand out into teams. So we do work with the brokerages as well, but the big earners, unless they're a huge brokerage, their profit margins are really slim, right? Like, making money owning a brokerage is really difficult. Like, the big brands get paid, the agents want more and more coming back to them. So we work with the top producing people who buy and sell homes. Then we help them expand out into teams. So they have people working with their brand, their name, but they might still be under like a Century 21, a Remax, in Canada, Royal LePage, Sotheby's. I'm trying to think what else you guys might have there. Engel and Volkers. I don't know which ones you guys have. There's so many of them.
Okay. And so what's your relationship like with them? What is it you do exactly?
Oh, we help them expand everything in leverage. So we help them hire, we help them recruit other agents to help them. We help them with lead generation, how to train their agents so that if they give them business, that they're good with it. They know how to help a buyer and seller in a way that is positive. Like, so think about it. I'm going to recruit an agent, but now you're working with people out in the market with my name and my brand. I want to make sure that you're saying the right things and you're being, a top ethical, educated, efficient agent. I want to make sure you're a positive person in the market. So I need to train you, and I need to have like basically what all small businesses need to have, right? Like a foundation of like, how do I pay you? How do I train you? How do I keep you motivated? How do I retain you in the business? Who else do I have to hire to help us so we can focus on what we do that really brings the money in? Like, there's so many different things, and sales is all consulting. It's all mindset, right? Like, it's all mindset. You can have somebody saying, I can't use this business system, it won't work for me. And a month later, I work with their competitor or across the street who builds up like the biggest team in the city. And literally we've had that happen again and again. So people in any industry where it's commission based, they're really like energy and mindset and perception are huge for them. So we work a ton with mindset of who they are in the industry and how to stay positive, because most of the agents don't sell a lot of homes, and the average agent population is definitely, it's not the top 1%, right? The top 1% are optimistic and they're proactive and they're planners and they're builders and they're just super positive, but the rest of the industry isn't. So we have to kind of protect that energy around them. So we work a lot with like mindset, motivation, personal development, as well as business.
Okay. So how do you go about changing someone's mindset, giving them the right mindsets?
Well, I think you listen. You start by listening because you don't know where people are at, right? Like we have to meet people where they are. So listening to them and listening to what's important to them and how they're perceiving their world, I think is where we start. From there, it's like anything else. If we have a framework that we believe in for what do leaders do versus what do people who are passive, who feel like they don't have any personal power, they don't have any control, how are they processing situations? So we talk a lot about like responsive mindset versus reactive mindset, because if you lay it out that way, it's easier for people to see where they're at, right? Without saying, hey, you have a horrible mindset. Like that's not going to motivate anybody. But if they kind of notice that, hey, what do you notice about all the people who are doing really well? How do they think about the business? How do they perceive it? What are their characteristics? Like we model success. We work a lot with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, but essentially it's just modeling what works.
That's cool. Can you kind of describe your most successful client from someone that you managed to transform from like a really bad mindset to the best mindset?
I think I can think about some people I actually coached for almost 10 years and initially, really passive, really shy, really felt like they didn't see themselves, right? They didn't see their value. And I think at the end of 10 years, I watched them come into their own as a strong businesswoman, a confident businesswoman, somebody who knew who they were. They knew how to make decisions very quickly. They knew the value they brought to the market and they didn't beat themselves up anymore. If somebody didn't pick them, or I think they used to have a lot of comparison of what other people had, but they weren't seeing the whole story. It was like the social media highlight reel, right? And they finally stepped into their own and said, these are the things that are important to me. So I'm going to focus on these things. And if I have these things, I'm successful. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. And I think now they'll be a mentor and they'll contribute to so many people around them, but they didn't start out, they didn't see their strength at the beginning. So, this person I'm thinking of, I think it was completely a 180 for them.
And then conversely, have you had any people that just didn't want to hear it and that you just couldn't really reach?
Yes, for sure. And sometimes remember, like I'll work with people who might be at a brokerage or a team and I'm not there day to day. So they might talk to me once a week, right? So maybe they're unhappy with where they're at. They're unhappy with the team and there's other dynamics that are going on and I'm an extension of that team. So they're looking at it and they're like, yeah, I just want to tap out. Like I'm not happy here. So that's always frustrating for me, but I've definitely had people leave the industry and go, I realize I don't want to be in real estate. I don't like this. This isn't for me. And that was a good outcome because I was trying to help them get to a place where they could like actually sustain their life in real estate. Like they had bills, they weren't making any money and they weren't willing to do anything that was going to help themselves. So I think that, in the end, I'm still turning it to a positive because I think they realized it just wasn't for them. They were not willing to do what it took. I'm so wired to look for a positive lesson no matter what. So I'm trying to think of an actual like, hey, that was just a fail. Like, I don't think so. I think end of the day, I've even had people come up to me years later and be like, I was totally pissed off at you. Like, I can't believe I didn't understand like how you had the nerve to say the things you said to me. And then a couple years later, I was like, oh shit. Yeah. Okay. I see it now. So I think all things play out in time, right? Like I'm always well-intentioned to help people. So I hope that if they didn't hear the whole message, they heard some of it when the time was right,
Yeah, definitely. Same kind of feeling from that. Okay. So switching gears, what's it been like as a woman in the industry? Do you feel like it's a male-centered industry and that it's sort of harder to be taken seriously? And maybe I'll let you expand on it rather than me.
Yeah, the ownership in real estate is predominantly male. It's changing. The leadership in the brokerages has been predominantly male when it comes to like ownership, right? Because there's ownership of the brand and ownership of the offices. When it comes to thought leadership and coaching, it has been dominantly male, 100%. So for me, I think it's, the majority of actual real estate agents out there selling in North America are women. Like it's more, I think it's 60% or more of our women. But yet the people on our stages, the people sharing their perceptions, their beliefs, their leadership are almost all men. So this is difficult. And we keep hearing that, oh, there just aren't as many women speakers or women leaders. And I think there are amazing women leaders. There are amazing women in all things that are connected with real estate, but we often bring our voice in different ways and we explain things in different ways. And I think that as a woman, I look towards voices that are like me. And I think that's important, but I think it's difficult, right? Like there's a whole bunch of research, or there is research that talks about, when a man gets an opportunity, he says yes. And he's like, I can figure it out on the way. Whereas a woman has to be asked 7 times to say yes, because she processes through all the reasons why she's not ready. She's not prepared. She can't do it. So on the one hand, I think as women, like we need to show up. We need to be confident. We need leadership so we can feel confident in showing up and sharing our voice. I think that's really important. So I think that my mentality has been, you have to be so good they can't ignore you. And I have watched people who have friends get put on stages who don't have a fraction of our experience or our results. That's just a fact. It's happened, but it's happened to men too. So I have no choice. All I can do is be so good that eventually, if you didn't put me on your stage and other people are having those results, it kind of looks bad on you. So, plant seeds or hit ceilings. I choose to plant seeds.
Definitely. Okay. You have employees, right? So when you're hiring, what's your favorite question to ask people to kind of really gives you like the nugget of information that you're probably looking for to like tell?
We ask so many things. Yeah. Like I'd love to ask them what's their ideal environment to work in. And if they could set up like their ideal, work life, what would they work on? What hours would they work? What environment would they be in? What's their ideal boss? Like, how do they communicate with them? What type of things would they say to them? Like, I like to basically do value elicitation, which is like, what's important to you in a manager? What's important to you in a job? And like, keep asking it so you can get to the root of what's really core for them. So I'd like to ask a lot of things that show me how they process. What's the biggest mistake you ever made that you don't regret? Or what's like most difficult thing you had in a workplace? Like some of them are standard questions, but they tell you a lot. So we have a whole list of them that we ask.
Cool. Okay. And then writing your book, what kind of process did you have behind doing that? Did you sort of wake up every morning and do it for an hour? Did you just sort of cut yourself off for a whole month? Like, how did you make it happen?
I did a lot of planning. I went to Italy and I backpacked all around. I went back. I was there a little over 2 weeks, but I spent the second week spending a lot of time planning the book. So I planned like all the chapters and what it was going to be about and what the message was and who my ideal reader was and all that stuff before I even started really hardcore writing. So when I went into writing, I tried to be in a flow state. So it was more just like write a whole chapter, start to finish, and then stop, like just let it flow. And I had all my notes for key points. I'd already done all that planning. So I just let myself go into creativity. So I spent like 10, 11, 12-hour days at Starbucks, multiple days. And I did what I do. I just created a deadline intention. I worked with a coach too, who had accountability. And I don't think I would have ever got it done if I didn't work with a coach. I was just so busy and telling myself I couldn't. So that really helped.
Yeah, I think coaches are very useful. So you didn't try and get a publisher or anything?
I do. A publisher has picked up the book in New York. So it'll be in bookstores January 2021. I mean, we'll see with the world right now what will happen, but they're still working away on it. It'll be on Audible as well, and the print version on Amazon. So right now we're able to give away the digital copy because the publishers have picked it up. So we're allowed to give away the online digital version now. So anybody listening who wants it, it's just Top 1% Life, like the numerical one, top1percentlife.com. It's just a free copy.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Certainly go and do that. So you haven't like listed it on Amazon or anything then? To buy?
It is listed on Amazon for the digital, like for Kindle. So you can buy it there, but if you don't have Kindle and you just want like a download, a PDF, you can just get it for free from me for now.
Cool. Let's go see. All right. So last 2 questions I try to ask people. One is, what is one of your earliest ever memories?
I remember being in the backyard in the sandbox and like just playing and making stuff and kind of, which is related to the other one, which is just one, like walking around. I lived in a smaller town for hours. I'd have freedom, right? I could just walk around, go to parks, explore, write poetry, create, have all these visions. So I loved all that time just on my own as a little kid, just to explore. Yeah.
You say you're like a bit of an introvert, or you just like having time to yourself?
I'm definitely a bit of an introvert. So people are always surprised, like, what do you mean? Like you speak on these huge stages, like you'll talk to thousands of people. I'm like, yeah, but I'm talking essentially to myself. Like it's a little bit different, right? Like I'd rather be on a stage and talk to thousands of people than walk in like a networking function and like, I'll do it. I've trained myself to do it, but it's not my comfort zone.
Yeah, same. Cool. Nice to know. I definitely surprise people these days when they're like, you're not an introvert. I'm like, I'm such an introvert.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. And then what is one of the kindest things that someone has ever done for you?
Oh my goodness. So many people have been kind to me. I think just the big one, like when I left home when I was young at 16, one of my friends' families took me in. So they ordered like a cot and I had my own little bed in my friend's room. And they took me in for like a year and a half before I went to university. And that's a big deal. So, I mean, I think people have done very kind things for me, but that's a huge long-term kind thing. So I'm going to pick that one as the biggest one.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you ever like send them cards and things and stuff?
We used to keep in touch for years. Like they're still on my Facebook and I see them and we'll, say happy birthday and stuff like that. But I think because my life got so busy and one of them moved away and so we're still connected. And I mean, my wedding, like way back, I talked about them. And I think that I've done a lot that they know how thankful I am for what they did, like several times. But I haven't written them a card lately, so I probably should.
Yeah, that's a good time. Cool. You've got some take homes for you. I've certainly got lots of notes of things I want to try. Nice.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You got any questions you quickly want to ask me or?
No, I think this is fantastic. I love what you're doing. And I think if anybody has questions for me, we're all over social media, reach out anytime. And we'll love to share it with our network as well. I think this is fantastic. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. My goal for this podcast is to help make people happier and wiser. And I'm also working on a few other projects in the podcasting space to achieve the same thing. I run the Wiser Than Yesterday podcast with a friend, where we read and discuss a great non-fiction book a week. Talk about things like philosophy, psychology, the economy, self-improvement, and business. Books such as The Black Swan, Anti-Fragile, Invisible Women, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a great resource. Most recently, I've been building an app, Syncify. It's really to level up your podcast experience. You can connect with your friends in the app and listen to the same things. So you can listen live in real time with each other, or create shared playlists and catch up at your own pace. You learn so much more by discussing ideas with friends. It's really silly to listen alone. You can also discover and share brilliant episodes with ease without having to try and recommend podcasts in different apps and just it all getting lost and confused. So it's also good for combating isolation and mental health. I personally find social media quite antisocial and I just don't find it easy to reach out to friends to chat for no real reason. But I do love doing things with other people, and listening to the same content means that I can naturally talk about the same things, and it just gives me that friend time without going out of my way. So I really hope that it can help you, and I just would love you to try out the beta version and help us build this. And obviously do invite your friends. It's all about friends. So you can find out more about Syncify app by going to syncifyapp.com. Thanks for listening. Congratulations on listening to a whole episode of the Growth Mindset podcast. Before you race into another podcast, try pausing. Ask yourself, what have you learned? What could you change? How will you make that change happen? Did you press pause? Knowledge is useless without action. What did you learn? What should you change? And how will you make that change happen? You can tell us what you learned by contacting us through the website, growthmindsetpodcast.com. And feel free to connect with us or our guests, or just peruse the show notes. Our Instagram is @growthmindsetpodcast, or follow me @samjamsnaps for a daily reminder to stop using Instagram. If you enjoy random acts of kindness and want to support the show, you can support us on Patreon or leave us a review on iTunes, and you'll make me very happy. And with that, keep learning and keep growing.